Welcome to the Nonprofits. For our second segment this week, we'll be examining the effect that one life can have on the world, for better or for worse. Flabbergasted, is this going to be a for better life story or for worse? Give us the details here.
Well, the passing of infamous Christian leader James Dobson does really bring about a lot of complicated feelings for many people. On one hand, he was a popular religious figure with many who looked to him for religious guidance and advice through his plethora of written works and lectures. But on the other hand, are those who have suffered on behalf of the harmful advice and his regressive approach to family relationships that he advocated for in that. One of the main contentions people had with James Dobson was his advocacy of using physical violence as a method of engaging with kids. And beyond that, his parenting advice, which he also gave advice on family structure, promoting an authoritarian and patriarchal system where husbands and fathers dominate the family. More so, he also added a lot of fuel to the fire of the Satanic Panic, which sought out and coincidentally found satanic influences in anything that was not already within a very narrow Christian Puritan worldview, and demonized so many elements of pop culture, telling parents that their children were engaging in demonic behaviors simply because they're playing a game, reading a book, or watching a movie. His involvement in Christian culture is responsible in so many ways for the rise of authoritarianism and authoritarian Christian nationalism in society today. And even though he's gone and we can no longer add to the woes of the world, his legacy can and will. And we cannot combat that harm without being able to call it and him out for it. And this is reported by Henry Carlson at Smart News on August 25th, 2025.
All right. Thank you, Flabbergasted. I understand that this story has a special place in your heart. Can you talk to us about the effects that James Dobson has had on your life?
Yeah, it does have a special place in my heart in so many horrible ways. I grew up personally influenced by James Dobson and the ideas propagated by his organization Focus on the Family. I grew up very evangelical, non-denominational Christianity. I wasn't allowed to celebrate Halloween for many years due to satanic panic types of issues. And you could see the change in my family. Like there was times we were allowed to do Halloween and all that stuff was okay. And then all of a sudden, you know, my parents started engaging in a lot more of the theocratic approaches to raising children. And all of a sudden, Halloween is no longer available. It's why, while everyone else is celebrating Halloween, it's kind of a bum time of the year for me. So no skeletons in my front yard, unfortunately. But also I attended a Focus on the Family centered homeschool group for a year when I was middle school. And that reinforced so many problematic ideas about what it means to be a good child and how your parents should discipline you and you know, that evolution is not real and all the fun things that you really get with Focus on the Family.
Right.
And my father, who was a fairly abusive father, well, he never cited James Dobson directly, right? He utilized the same type of approaches to parenting that he advocated for. And it was behavior that was reinforced, not necessarily because my dad was reading James Dobson books, but because the people around him and the people that he engaged with shared those kinds of beliefs that were popularized and reinforced by James Dobson and his ilk. And all of these things were influenced directly or indirectly by James Dobson. And so, yeah, it had a very personal impact on me and my childhood in so many ways.
Right. Yeah. It sounds like it's like ridiculously strict and authoritarian. Jonathan, I want to jump over to you real quick. Speaking of authoritarian approach. So Dobson's philosophies seem to follow a very extreme authoritarian approach to control in the family and within the community and within the, you know, the congregation and that kind of thing. Can you expand on some of that for us?
Yeah, I find it interesting and in a way that steps to controlling the beliefs and actions of people are often to save them from evil influence, and save in quotes. And the evil influences just happen to always correlate with what they want to prevent somebody from doing or thinking or saying.
Yeah, isn't that funny how it always works out that way? It's just God always happens to be saying exactly the same thing that the person wants to say themselves.
Right. Why does God hate all the same things I do?
Yeah, go figure.
Yeah, exactly.
What a coincidence.
It is just.
You must be a prophet. You're on the show, my friend.
Yeah, no, damn. I could be a prophet. I can lie like the rest of them, so it's like I've just tried not to anymore, so but the focus on the family thing in an authoritarian model is doing the exact opposite to kids that they claim to be doing. We have to be concerned about the children. You hear that ad nauseum every time they're trying to do something harmful to somebody. It's all about saving the children. And I want everybody to think very clearly about that. Children don't need saving if they're in a healthy household. Okay. So you must be doing something wrong if your kids need to be saved from things. So just think about that for a minute. But this is an authoritarian model, and it's meant to start with the family. And then it's supposed to get so popular that it becomes a movement within the society. And then the people who want to take over and get rid of a republic and a democracy then have the momentum and the popular base to do that. And so that's what happens. And you lose a liberal society when you start allowing households to be autocratic. It's stupid to not catch this stuff in the act when it's starting, which was back in the 70s and 80s, and catch it then and say, that's bullshit, and just let people know that you don't need to be doing that to go to heaven. That's not a thing, so they may not be atheists. So you can always tell them that this has nothing to do with the Sermon on the Mount or those little phrases you see in the New Testament that are in red, like Jesus's words, has nothing to do with them. So this is all Pauline nonsense. So think to yourself before you start designing a life for your children that is going to harm them and cause them to not fit into a society that is technological and scientific, because they need to be able to understand science to live in the world anymore. So if you want them to live in the prairies of the 1800s, you're doing the right thing.
I think the scary thing is that they do want their kids. People who hold these beliefs, a lot of them do want their kids living in the prairies of the 1800s. They'd be willing to sacrifice some of the benefits of modernity, of a technologically advanced and secular society, to be able to reinforce these kinds of religious viewpoints and religious perspectives. That's the whole problem of the Christian nationalist movement as a whole. And this is exactly why it's a problem, because it's pulling us back. And as you pointed out, John, it is absolutely harming children. This whole methodology is not about saving the kids. It's about saving the kids from things you don't like. And there's a huge difference between those things, because if people who believe this kind of stuff actually cared about protecting the kids, it wouldn't only apply to when they're playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
One thing Jonathan mentioned was that the part of the goal was to not just to have this within the family, but then to spread it, to like spread the message or spread the word or spread this policy throughout. And Flabbergasted, I saw you nodding when Jonathan was talking about that. Was that your experience when you were involved with with a congregation that kind of followed Dobson's approach? I mean, was it just finding your place in your community? Was it finding your place in your own family? Or was it, okay, we're going to follow this model in our family and we're going to spread it? Because there are communities that are very rigid and very strict, like the Amish community, for example, who are not really interested in spreading that beyond the borders of their community. So what was your family experience in those lines?
So I think it's important to point out that my parents weren't reading James Dobson and then being like, I'm going to beat my kid more. It was kind of an overarching perception of how to raise kids that is reinforced by religion that was being popularized indirectly as well from his approach to these things. And so the idea of starting with the family and expanding out, it's also not unique to focus on the family. And so it gets a little complicated when we talk about my particular backstory, because I also have history with Team Mania Teen Mania Ministries, if you're familiar. The Choir of the Fire, the very kind of militarized religiosity of the 1990s.
Mountains program.
Yeah. If you're not familiar with Teen Mania Ministries, there's a show on Amazon Prime that has season 2 focused on what is it called? Shiny Happy People. Shiny Happy People.
Oh, yeah.
Season 2, episode 1 is my childhood. And it is very much this whole, we have to focus here, we build the core here, and then we expand it out as a way of taking over society as a whole. So it's not just focus on the family that causes this problem. It expands into other things, but absolutely there's a relationship between that.
So is the idea of is the goal to make the family correct, or is it the goal to mold the family into soldiers? I mean, you kind of mentioned militaristic or militant. Is spreading the word the primary goal there, or is it more along the lines of we want to make our family right and we want to help other families make their family right?
Spreading the word is the excuse they give to trying to militarize the society and militarize the family so that they can use them as a power grab. This is just power politics. This has nothing to do with the Bible or anything else. This has to do with, if we control the populace and we get them on our side, we can take over the government. And then when we take over this government, then we can take over the adjacent governments. Then we can take over the world. And that's what they're trying to do. Their object is to be powerful enough to dictate to people everything, not just their religion. They want to control everything.
So authoritarianism with a capital A is what you're saying.
Yes.
And I think it's actually
exactly
worse.
What it is.
I think it's actually worse than what John is saying there, because it is power politics, but it's power politics fueled by people who actually believe these things. Right. It's not that it's just a facade used for power. They actually believe these things, and because they believe these things, they're using authoritarian methods to push this as a way of gaining control in society, to make the society more in line with their understanding of their specific religious views.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Interesting perspective there. We've been talking about Dobson's policies and his approach and that kind of thing, his teachings. I want to focus a little bit more on James Dobson, the man, right now. Flabbergasted, we often talk about the idea of separating the artist from their art, or separating the author from their writings and that kind of thing. For example, many people still enjoy the music of Michael Jackson, even though he very allegedly, was a pedophile and a child abuser. Right. Here we have James Dobson, whose life work has been harmful to society. I think we can show that. I think we have, we have a good example with us here right this evening. Wait, that sounded horrible. That was not meant to be an insult to you, Flabbergasted. How he's now dead. Okay. So he's now died. As skeptics that recognize that harm, should that affect how we react to the death of the man? And I do have a follow-up question that I'm going to give to Jonathan here in a second, but should that affect, can we separate the artist from the art in this case? And should that affect how we react to Dobson's death?
I think there is a fair ability to separate the artist from the art when the art is not the harm. But in the case of James Dobson, what he was promoting, the works he was putting out, were the harm. It wasn't just Thriller, right? If Michael Jackson allegedly was a child, abuser, for lack of better internet words, if that's what he was, Thriller wasn't about that.
Right.
You can sing Thriller and not be like, oh, this is telling me to go hurt children. James Dobson's books were.
Okay.
And so there is no separation when your art is the harm. And so how do we react to the death of someone like that? I personally find relief in it. I don't celebrate it. I'm not like, yay, he's dead, because that's not how you react to death. But I can look and say, he is no longer able to harm people. Like the harm that he has caused, and his legacy is still going to continue causing harm, but he himself can no longer do that. And that's a relief.
Right.
I can see relief in that. And I feel for his family who suffered through the loss of a family member. That's a real thing. And their pain is real too. But the harms that he caused, and I understand why people might be happy that he is gone. I don't think that's the appropriate approach. But who are you to tell an abuse victim that they're not allowed to be happy because someone who partook in their abuse is no longer with us? That's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And I really appreciate the way that you couched that. Jonathan, I want to take that question to you, but I want to give it a little bit of a twist here. Earlier today, as we're recording this show, right-wing commentator Charlie Kirk was shot and killed during a debate in Utah. And we've seen reactions kind of all over the board. We see people celebrating. We see people mourning. We see people complaining about this, that, and the other group. We see people just saying, well, whatever. We see people saying, who the heck is Charlie Kirk? And so, but we're all humanists here. As humanists, what's an appropriate way to respond to somebody who has died or even had a significant loss? If that person, even though that person happens to oppose you ideologically. So what would be what would be the appropriate reaction here? Or is there an appropriate reaction, or is there a range of appropriate reactions?
Well, like most things, I think it's on a spectrum, and I think that people are going to have the emotions they have. I don't think you can discount the people who are celebrating. I'm not going to do any virtue signaling on this, because what it is you're reacting to something that affected you personally. Mm-hmm. This is a personal thing. Do I think they should go up to their family members and say, ha ha? No. That would be just causing more harm. Again, humanists, we don't want to cause harm if we don't have to. However, if somebody decides to throw a party because of it, because they are an abuse sufferer, as I was, and they want to get some joy out of it, I have no problem with that personally. Just don't do it in such a way that you're going to harm anybody else. And that's tough to manage. That can be a tightrope. And, I don't think that humanists really want to celebrate anybody's death. We don't, I think we just don't feel it that way.
Right.
The loss of a life means that not only is there potential evil that got snuffed out, there's also the potential good that person could have completely reversed course and started working on your side, and it was so much more powerful doing that because of what he did before.
Right.
You don't know what the future holds.
Right.
In the Lord of the Rings, they have Gandalf has one statement that I always thought about, is that I guess Frodo had said, why didn't you kill Gollum before? And he says, do not be so quick to decide who dies and who lives. And because basically in the future they may still have a role to play. So and in this case it did in the story, but the whole idea is the same with people. That people change. My father, when I was growing up, was not somebody I would consider wanting to be around at all. Mm-hmm. Years later, he was, because he is a brilliant man and he had changed. People change. If you don't like somebody today, they may be 180 out and 2 or 3 years from now.
Right.
So if you're celebrating somebody's death, what good things are you also missing? So it's like, maybe none. Maybe this guy was going to be this way till his death. Mm-hmm. And maybe we did see the end of him personally causing harm. And what he did do is start a movement that actually is causing great harm right now.
Right.
So do I have emotions about him passing? Yes. Do I think that that's appropriate? Yes. They're my emotions. Of course they're appropriate.
Sure.
For me. But that doesn't mean I have to use them as motivation to do any harm to anybody else.
Exactly. I think that's a very good distinction there. We want to make sure that we're not having collateral damage here. I mean, there's a difference between, and as Flabbergasted was talking about, there are cases where we can separate the artist from the art. And so celebrating the end of somebody not being able to commit harm anymore is different than saying, ha, that human being has died, or that human being suffered, especially in the case when they do have loved ones left behind that are suffering, that are feeling pain because they lost somebody that was close to them, even if that person that was close to them, even if that person was everything in their life, just because we see them in a different light, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing to kind of, like you said, point at them and say "ha ha" in front of their faces and that kind of thing. So I really appreciate the contributions both of you made to that question. I have one last question that I want to talk about here, and that is, it's common when people disagree for one side to dismiss the other side's position simply because they're on the other side. I'm not going to listen to them because they're Republican. I'm not going to listen to them because they're Democrat. I'm not going to listen to them because they're atheist. I'm not going to listen to them because they're theist, that kind of thing. In other words, there can be an assumption of bias there. Whether it's deserved or not, we see this kind of thing happening a lot these days. What would you say to someone that accuses you of bad-mouthing Dobson? I saw you on the nonprofits, bad-mouthing Dobson, just because he's religious. Flabbergasted, what would be your response to that?
My response to that would be, look at all the religious people who I think are wonderful and amazing people. I'm not, if I was bad-mouthing someone just because they're religious, I would not be doing anything but bad-mouthing people all day long. The reason why James Dobson is specifically being rallied against, right? Like, people are rallying against Dobson, not because he's religious, but because the ideas that he promotes are demonstrably harmful. It's not that I disagree with them. It's not that I don't like them. It's that the ideas that he promotes are demonstrably harmful. I know this from a personal experience, but even take away my personal experience, because that's bad evidence, the data demonstrates it. The
Right.
ideas that he promoted were in direct contrast to our understanding of behavioral psychology, of child development, even when he was getting his degree in psychology. He got his degree in psychology and ignored all the evidentiary-based practices that existed that told him and told everyone in the field of psychology that that approach to rearing children is harmful. And so that's what I'm rallying against. I'm not rallying against religious people because they're religious. I'm rallying against religious ideas that harm others.
Jonathan, what about you? Have you ever been accused of being closed-minded and, disliking somebody just because they're religious? Has that ever happened to you?
Oh, yeah. When I was at work once, we had a very religious lady there who something happened where there is this organization, this restaurant that is extremely religious and has caused great harm to a great many LGBTQ people. And they had ordered lunch from it for everybody. And I wouldn't eat it. And she came up to me and said, "Is that because they're religious?" It was a hand wave, and she was trying to hand wave my feelings away.
Right.
And that kind of hand waving, well, because you hate religious people, you're not doing that. That's not why I'm doing it.
It's really dismissive.
It has nothing to do with their religion. It's what their religion is causing them to do to a group of people who I happen to be a member of. Right. And that means it's hurting me directly. So, no, I'm doing it because they're harming me, not because they're religious. I know lots of religious people. I know people from just about every major religion in the world. I've lived around the world. Okay. Most of the people in the world are actually really cool people, if you bother to look beneath any obvious problems with them. But the idea with people is that they see what they can use to dismiss it from their mind, so they don't have to use their brains to think about what's going on deeper than just the surface level. It's an energy conservation thing. We do that naturally. We've been bred to do that. Don't think too deeply unless you absolutely have to. It burns calories that you might not be able to replace. So there you go.
Yeah, definitely. Great insight there. I really appreciate that. I think we're going to have to wrap it up on that note, though. So I want to thank you both for hanging out with me here this evening. And I want to thank all of you for watching. And if you want to watch more, we got all kinds of links here for you to click on. So start clicking.